Good morning. Today I'm going to do example number 5 in your partial fraction decomposition practice. And I want you to make a big note and make a big star near the number 5 because number 5 is a very special problem. In number 5, we first note that the degree of the numerator is less than the degree of the denominator. The numerator is degree 2. The denominator, if we multiplied together, would be degree 3. However, there is a repeated factor in the denominator, okay? And this is important because the way that we deal with a repeated factor, and I've talked about this in a previous video, is actually very important, right? We all see the quantity z minus 5, but the exponent of 2 tells me it occurs twice. So really what's happening on the denominator is there are technically 3 factors, right? Z minus 5 is repeated. And because there are technically 3 factors, that means we need 3 fractions. But when we break up our 3 fractions, we have to do it in a very specific way. So we have to say a over the first factor of z plus 1. But with my repeated factor, I have to first write as a degree 1 in the denominator. So I have to first say the quantity z minus 5, right? But then I do need to put in the z minus 5 squared. So c is going to go over the quantity z minus 5 squared. Now it's kind of hard to explain why in a video because it's rather complicated, but you just have to imagine if you're going to add these 3 fractions together, what you need to have on the numerator is no higher than a degree 2. And if you were to get a common denominator and add them using this particular breakdown, it would work. So sort of the informal proof is when we get our final answer, the final answer works to get me what I started with using this particular method. Okay, so now let's continue. At this point, I think we're pretty good at knowing what comes next. I have 3z squared plus 1 over the quantity z plus 1 times z minus 5 squared, right? And now I can get my common denominator. My common denominator is z plus 1 times the quantity z minus 5 squared. And on the numerator, I get a times the quantity z minus 5 squared plus b times the quantity z plus 1 times z minus 5. And then finally, plus c times the quantity z plus 1. Okay, so make sure you agree with that logic. And now we're going to do what we always do. We are going to try to solve for a, b, and c. We're going to try to do it in the easiest way. The first thing I'm going to do is set the numerators equal. So I have 3z squared plus 1 equals a times the quantity z minus 5 squared plus b times the quantity z plus 1 times z minus 5 plus c times the quantity z plus 1. And this is where I'm going to plug everything in. This is where I'm going to focus all of my attention. And my job at this point is to solve for A, B, and C. So let's start making Z be something super easy. So if I let Z equal -1, that will do the trick of eliminating B and C, right? If I plug a -1 here, I'm going to get 0 times C, -1 here, B is going to cancel out. So let's plug in a -1 and solve for A. So I have 3 times -1 squared. Notice when I substitute, I am substituting with parentheses so I can properly follow the order of operations. Okay, this is -1 minus 6 squared. And I'm not copying anything else down because that's going to add to 0. So being careful, this is going to give me the quantity -1 squared is +1 times 3 plus 1 is 4. And this is going to be, oh shoot, sorry about that. I meant to make that a 5. I knew that didn't look right. Good thing I caught that. So that should be -1 minus 5. I don't know where I got the 6 from. But that'll be -6 squared is actually a positive 36. So I would know that A would be 1 over 9. Okay, and let's continue finding other easy examples. What if I let Z equal positive 5? Why would that work? Well, that would eliminate A, because this would cancel to 0, and that would eliminate B, allowing me to solve for C. So I'm going to say 3 times 5 squared plus 1 equals C times 5 plus 1. So this is going to be 25 times 25 times 3, 75 plus 1 is 78. No, sorry. 76. I can't think today. And then this is going to be 6C. Divide by 6, and let's reduce the fraction. So if I divide by 2, I'm going to get 38 over 3. So you might want to double check my math. Having some trouble this morning making sense. Make sure you agree with those numbers. And finally, I need to solve for B. So what would be the easiest thing to do? Well, what if we allowed Z to be 0, right? If I use Z as 0, that is going to cancel